1,000. Let's speak to Alex Crowley, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was at number 10. Alex, afternoon to you.
Hello, how are you?
Good at this end. Just give us an idea, before we sort of get into these specific numbers, how often would this come up at number 10? Was this, I remember speaking to one of the head honchos at the Home Office a year or so back, and he was explaining to me that, you know, this is non-stop. We're at this non-stop. We never stop. It's not every department, different parts do different things. He said, but on this specific point, we never stop, even though the public think we're doing nothing.
Yeah, and this is one of those areas of government policy where it is a constant issue, and the trouble is any government of any party or any political complexion doesn't have the power to do anything about it. That's the reality here. We are in a ridiculous situation where the government has just passed a law that says anyone who comes here illegally on a small boat, and by coming here on a small boat it is illegal, they should be immediately deported unless there's an extremely good reason why they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That law is unenforceable. And the reason why it's unenforceable is because the second you try and do that, the Strasbourg Court of Human Rights will declare it as a breach of human rights. There is no recourse to this. The judgments are final. We have no influence in that court that is not in the UK. And await a government to actually address the real problem.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Alex, in addition to that, there's various other legal hurdles as well. Because the point is, as you rightly say, it is illegal to try and essentially break into a country. But of course, the moment you put your hand up and say, I'm claiming asylum, the illegality is somewhat diluted and you become a genuine application, as it were. And then
Well, that's not what the recent law that was just passed.
Well, indeed, that's an attempt to try and stop that. But, of course, it won't stop the lawyers still arguing the case that it breaks other conventions, even other than the one that you refer to.
And the reason why the lawyers can do that, and they make a very nice living out of it, by the way, is because the Strasbourg Court of Human Rights has the final say. And until a government confronts that problem, and it is a problem, by the way, that will confront, let's say, Keir Starmer, if he wins the election next year, it's the same problem that will confront him. He knows a bit about this, of course. He's a human rights lawyer himself. He may well have done a couple of these cases.
I'm sure he has. I'm sure he has.
And it's not just me saying this, right? OK, these are very respected people that are finally coming around to this problem. You look at Lord Sumption, for example, former Justice of the UK Supreme Court. Yeah. He's not some kind of right-wing headbanger. Listen to what he has to say. I just want to read this out to you, Ian, if you'll indulge me just for a minute.
Please do.
This is what he says. Right? He says, the tendency to classify ever more acts of government as breaches of human rights means bringing large swathes of our national life within the jurisdiction of this court, into which we have no input whatsoever. Yeah. That's a former Justice of the UK Supreme Court saying that. That is the real problem here. So we can talk forever about small boats. We can talk about all the various ideas. Let's put some tents on the beaches. Let's turn the boats back. Let's send them to Rwanda, etc., etc., etc. This is all a sideshow.
Indeed. Absolutely. I appreciate Boris Johnson is no longer the Prime Minister, but when you were working with Mr. Johnson, where was this on his radar? Because I say this respectfully, I never imagined that Boris was the kind of leader that was particularly perturbed by this part of British life.
No, I mean, it wasn't that much of an issue back when I was there, obviously, because Brexit was the dominant thing that was going on at the time. However, actually, Boris was very liberal on immigration. Yeah. That's one of the things his opponents kind of misread.
The amnesty, when he proposed an amnesty as Mayor of London, of course.
And look, actually, let's be clear, right? I think it's amazing that certain people around the world look to our country as a place in which they can prosper and thrive. That makes me feel good. That is a vote of confidence in our country. They could go to any country they like, but they choose us, OK? This is a good thing. Immigration has been a very, very positive thing in our national life. And in fact, we take record numbers of legal migrants, okay, who follow the process. The numbers are at their highest that they've ever been. So this is not some kind of cruel, heartless government that wants to turn away anybody who wishes to make their life here. This is about dealing with people coming over and very often who have no choice because they're in the hands of evil smuggling gangs and the black market. They're coming over here and breaking the law. If you come over here on a small boat, you are breaking the law, and And that's what the law says. And by the way, if the left and the Labour Party think that should be changed, then let's see your proposals to change that law to make it legal.
Do you
think Keir Starmer will know that?
Indeed. Alex, do you think it was, high risk doesn't really cover it, strategy of Rishi Sunak to unequivocally claim he's going to stop the boats? It's even the slogan. It was written behind him. It's there on paper, stop the boats. That's a solid pledge that he simply cannot achieve.
I think Sunak made that pledge with the best of intentions. I think he genuinely felt, and probably still feels, that he can work his way through the problem. He's a very diligent politician. He thinks, he likes to work his way through the detail, and he thinks that if we just take a nice pragmatic course and study the spreadsheet a bit longer and have a few more discussions, that we can fix the issue. And of course, on most things, that's probably true. But he's in exactly the same dilemma as every previous prime minister before him, which is, what the real solution is, but do you have the political capital, the political will to actually address the real issue?
Indeed. One of the points we've made, and Annabel Denham, our previous speaker, was echoing it too. I mentioned the word amnesty. You can almost see a Labour government employing that technique, if that's the right terminology, almost from the off, because he's made this bold pledge about cutting the backlog and addressing the problem. And I can't see, Alex, any other way that could be achieved without saying, right, 50,000 of you, that's it, you're free to stay, and therefore you've cut the backlog in half, as it were.
And I couldn't imagine a more effective marketing method for the people smuggling gangs.
Absolutely right, and there's the risk. But as you rightly say, it's not going to go away for Starmer. There's nothing in the air that suggests this is going to stop.
Yeah, and we await to hear what his plan actually is. Like on so many areas of policy, he seems to be relying on the fact that people don't like the government and are keen for a change. And that's fine. That happens when you get to this point in the cycle. But all the evidence shows that most people have no idea what Starmer's going to do about anything.
True. I had a slight euphoric moment the other day in that I was, we've kind of all resigned ourselves, and as commentators and journalists and presenters, etc., we talk about this inevitability of a Labour government, and the polls suggest huge swings to Labour, etc., and we've seen some by-elections that have almost borne that point out. But then there was a moment when I thought, hang on a sec, when Boris came in, 80-seat majority plus, we all said, look, that's not just one term, that's 2 guaranteed terms in office, because no one has ever overturned an 80-seat majority. And, of course, the Scotland that Labour would have to deal with. Well, the Scottish question has slightly been addressed. But I still was left with this moment of thinking, do you know what? It's not a done deal for Keir Starmer, right? It's still a big majority that he's got to overturn. And yes, there are some marginal seats where, and even some not so marginal seats where Labour have snuck in a by-election. But it's still a huge ask. It would still be extraordinary if Keir Starmer either won and came back with a 200 majority or something, which is what some of those polls suggest.
Yes, I think the idea that Starmer's going to have a huge landslide, I think, is perhaps getting a little bit carried away.
Yeah.
The fact is, if you really look at the data, the base of Labour support is pretty soft. And the reason why it's pretty soft is that people don't really know what Starmer stands for. They don't really know what to expect with the Labour government. But what they want is a change. And at the moment, Labour and Starmer represent something of a change.
Yeah.
But I think there is still a huge question mark. People are concluding that, OK, well, we want to get rid of the Tories. Labour's the only alternative, and we may as well take a chance. OK, we may as well give it a go. We don't really know what it will involve. We don't know what they'll do, but we'll give it a go. That's not something you want to be heading into an election with if you're in opposition. In opposition, you want people having a very, very clear sense of who you are, what you stand for, and why you're better than the incumbent. And so you can see that eroding as we get closer to an actual decision point. Every single poll asks the theoretical question, if there was an election tomorrow. Well, there isn't an election tomorrow. An election is next year. So there's a long, long, long way to go. But of course, the government have got it all to do. Sunak's got it all to do, and they've got to start now telling people, OK, well, if you re-elect the Conservatives, what can you expect? Going beyond the 5-point plan, but what's the future hold?
Yeah.
What is the positive reason to continue, and it's a big ask, to continue a period of Conservative government?
Indeed. Alex, very thorough stuff. Thank you, as ever. Alex Crowley, former advisor to Boris Johnson.